Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Candidates Forum, presented by the Barre Lions Club in association with the Barre Council on Aging. My name is Tim Mara. I am the president of the Barre Lions Club, and this evening you will hear the views of the issues facing the town of Barre from the three candidates seeking the selectman seat that will be voted on at the special town election on Tuesday, August 9th. Now, to begin tonight's activities, will you please all rise and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now it is my pleasure to turn over the floor to the moderator of tonight's forum, Jeanette McIntosh. Jeanette is an associate member of the Barre Lions Club and a full member of the Athol Lions Club. She is an experienced moderator. She moderated a candidates forum that the Barre Lions sponsored 2 years ago. But before I turn the floor over to Jeanette, I want to make one announcement. As you all know, it's pretty hot tonight. But we have some fans going, hopefully to cool things off, and there's also water available in the back of the hall. If you get thirsty during the course of the forum, just raise your hand, and we have two representatives of the Barre Council on Aging in the back of the hall, Lester Paquin and Pat Koval, who would be happy to bring you water right at your seat, so you don't even have to get up. So now, without further ado, I'll turn the floor over to our moderator, Jeanette McIntosh.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, President Tim. This evening we'll be hearing from the candidates for the office of Selectman for the town of Barre. John Lathrop III, Robert Milkman Jr., and Matthew D. Urban. We thank, gentlemen, all of you, for giving of your time this evening. Our format this evening will be as follows. We will give each candidate a 5-minute time period to give their opening statements. We will then open to questions that have been submitted, the first one of which I will ask. And to those present who have questions, we're going to ask that you use the microphone here in the center so that all may hear. We ask that you keep your questions on the issues and remain respectful of our candidates and our fellow constituents. We ask that your answers, gentlemen, be reasonably brief and to the question asked. Our timekeeper will be Barre Lions President Tim Mara, who will tap the gong when your time is up. Tim, if you give us a tap. He likes to do that. Now let us begin with our first speaker, Mr. Lathrop. If you would come, please.
Good evening. I know a lot of you, and the other people I hope to get to know. My wife, Catherine, and I moved to Barre in 2004. We met in 2002, got married the following year at Tower Hill in Boylston. You saw all this in the Barre Gazette article. And we were looking for tranquility. We both had careers and worked in Boston. Kate worked at MIT, and I worked in the financial industry. We were looking for tranquility in a rural setting, and we found it in Barre, Massachusetts. We love Barre. we soon after we moved here, I realized I needed a truck. And at the house where Molly Stevens is living, Dennis Bassett had, I didn't know Dennis at the time, he had a truck on the lawn. And I drove by it, and I decided, gee, I think I'd like to have that truck. So I bought the truck. As soon as we got in the truck and started going down the road, people started waving to us. We'd only been here a couple of weeks. Kate said, what's going on? I said, well, I guess that's what they do here in Barre. People are known by their trucks. So right now we're known by the Honda Element that we have. That's got a snow plow scraping the side of it. We won't say who did that. So we have we've started an alpaca farm. We're now in our 11th or 12th year of raising alpacas, which are magnificent creatures. We raise them for their fine fleece. And Kate and I are both retired. We are very comfortable. And I decided to leave my comfort zone when there was an opening for selectmen. I've never been in town politics. I've watched with interest the goings on in this town since 2004, what happens in a small town. When you live in Newton, Massachusetts, or Boston on Beacon Hill, you don't see any of local politics. And it reminds me of a very important point, and that is we are all known by our stories and by our memories. And if you lose a loved one and people are gathered around, they talk about the stories and the memories. And I have a lot of stories and a lot of memories. I hope to share with you as I go around campaigning in the next 2 weeks. And I also would love to hear your stories, that your grandfather came over from Italy in 1922 to work at the Barre Woolen Mill, and you raised your family there, and they went to school, and you lived in High Plains, or you went to Quabbin. This is what this community is. It's a group of people and their stories. So my story is that I love Barre, Massachusetts. My wife does. We're here for the duration. And I know you all have wonderful stories you'd like to tell. I'd like to listen to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Robert Milkman, may we have your statements, please?
First things first, please bear with me, I'm not a public speaker. I wrote a very short article for the Barre Gazette, didn't get into much on myself. I love this town. I've walked around this town. The farmers market, one of my favorite things. It's getting smaller. There's issues with that. The Barre Rescue Squad, one of the best in the area. I don't know much else to say. I have a lot of friends in this town. Some of you know me, some of you. I did a lot with the theater while my daughter was there. My daughter hasn't been in the theater much lately, but she's done a lot of sports in town. I've been in the town since 2007. Made a lot of nice friends here. Haven't really met anybody in town I don't like. That's one of the good things about this town. A lot of the people are really good. All the businesses, I personally try to frequent the businesses in town because we have a lot of nice shops, a lot of nice people that trying to do a lot of good for this community and employing, a lot of them employ a lot of it, if you look, it's a lot of the youth in the town that's employed within the community, which is really good because it gets them a start. one thing I didn't go on is in my background, because some people say what makes you qualified to make decisions. I sat on one of the original boards for the Worcester County Food Bank. I was the purchasing manager for 3 casinos out in Nevada. I do know how to make informed decisions on financial issues. But I also know there's a lot of personal issues in towns, because you have the planning board, you have the board of health, you have everything else that Mr. Lipson here frequents, and I can honestly say nobody is a better supporter of this town than Sam here, because he goes to every town meeting and he makes sure the questions are asked, whether other people are there that can't ask them. So some of the people in town really are invested in this town. I'm trying to get invested in this town. I've been trying. My father and stepmother said the politics in this town was corrupt. So as soon as the position came up to be the selectman, I went for it. I knew Mr. Lathrop was going for it, and I met Mr. Urban at the town meeting. But I figured I'd still try anyways. Not too many people, a lot of people know me, and a lot of people think I'm still married to my ex-wife. That's how good of friends me and my ex-wife are. Everybody who sees us walking around town and thinks we're still married. We haven't been for a while, but it's still a good friendship there. I don't really know what else to say. This town, I've seen a lot of changes in it. Some of it for the good, some for the better. I do believe this town needs a little more business to help it out, because business, the right businesses will keep help bring the taxes down, but employ people closer to home, because everything's a half hour, 45 minutes away from Barry. Everybody works out of town unless you actually can work for the town or one of the small businesses in town. I wouldn't want to see it grow too much, because the town I grew up in, Northbridge, was a small town like Barry when I growing up in it. Not anymore. They let too much business in, and they sold off all the public land to developers. Wouldn't want to see that to this town, because we got beautiful farms, we got beautiful housing areas. It's not a town that I'd like to see destroyed, and it's a beautiful small town, and I think everybody in the town would like to keep it that way. Just maybe improve on things like our school system. I don't know what else to say right now, because like I said in the beginning, I'm not much of a public speaker. But I'll hand it over to Mr. Urban now.
Matthew Urban, your thoughts, please.
Hello, I'm Matt Urban. I moved to town in 2012, so I'm pretty new to town. I don't have a lot of history. Probably met most of you tonight as you walked in the door, but I think that's just a good start. Just to tell you a little bit about me, I spent 10 years in Missouri during the decade of the 80s. Then my family moved back to Massachusetts. I went to Marlboro High School. From there, I ended up going to WPI in Worcester. Spent about 12 years after that floundering, as I didn't finish my degree and felt like I was neck deep in debt. Kind of found my way out of it. Build myself back up, get my construction supervisor's license, start working small project management, working that up. Now I'm dealing some pretty large projects with the city of Worcester. So I kind of understand what it takes to try to dig yourself out and get back up. I would say one of the biggest things I've always had, and it comes with being a middle child, is bridging the gap between people. There's a lot of factions in town, and generally you're always not going to get along. But the whole purpose of town government is finding where you are alike and what you want as a group together and finding a way to make it happen. It's not easy. There are times you're going to have to go to people and say, the rest of the town doesn't want that, and we just can't go there. And then there's times where you're going to want to tell the town, that's a bad decision. And the town's going to say, I don't care, do it anyway. And you might have to just say, well, I told you my piece, but I'll do what you want. Because we still represent the town. That's a fine line. That's a difficult spot to be in. So I give credit to anybody that's been in that position. But I think you need to always come back to you represent the town. And I think recently we just had a couple issues with that. The town felt they had to do something, and well, rather than just sitting at home and complaining myself, I decided put myself out front, let people know who I am, and if they think they like who I am, then I'll step up and I'll pretty much volunteer my time to help the town just kind of manage itself. I think that's really what the select board is just helping the town manage itself. That's why you're voted in. If they don't like you, you're gone. You don't get comfortable as a select person. If you do, you're probably not going to stick around for too long. So in my opinion, what I think I can bring to the table is an openness. I want people to know what's going on in town. I want them to understand why we think this is a good direction to go. And I want to hear from people if they don't agree. I think that's sometimes missed. And when we try to get things moving, sometimes we try to race to an end. And we forget to give the town the chance to speak up, to voice their opinion, and be a part of how the town runs. That's generally the reason why I'm standing here right now, because I think that's a role I can fulfill. But as I said, that doesn't mean every time we talk we're going to agree, individual to individual, group to group. But I think the real role there as a select person is to identify the different positions and let the public know, and then work towards a means to an end. So no, I don't expect to make all of you happy. But I'm hoping that you would want me because you realize I'm going to listen to things objectively. As I said, I've only been here 4 years. I don't really have a lot of history to bring to the table. I don't have a lot of connections and relations to people. So I'm not going to go to the board with this feeling of I represent this neighborhood over that neighborhood, or this demographic over that demographic. I'm going in, so when something's presented to me, we look for the information, we ask the questions. If we see there's holes in it, we're not getting what we need to make a proper decision, we ask more questions. Sometimes we need to slow down and we need to listen to it a little more, or wait till the information's available. So pretty much, I want to be objective. I want to be fair. And so if that's what you want in a select person, then maybe I'm your man. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to let you know, I really am impartial up here. I live in the town of Orange. But as listening to these three candidates, I think any one of these gentlemen will do you fine. So we're going to open our questions. And I think I have a soft one to throw out. What are some of the good things happening in Barry? We'll start down the line. If Mr. Lathrop, you want to answer that one first? What are some of the good things happening in Barry?
There are many, many good things happening in Barry. And not everybody is aware of the good things that are happening in Barry. And one of the best things that's going to happen in Barry is that there's going to be a new select board that's going to work night and day for this town. I think that's a good thing. I'm retired and I'm prepared to spend 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night every day, the week and weekend, to make this the town it can be, with all of our resources and all of the ideas of 5,390 people, not 3 people. So I think that we are going to take advantage of the resources that are basically the people of Barry.
Thank you. Mr. Milton, what would you like to say?
The question was,
Something that you feel is a good thing happening in Barry.
good thing happening in Barry. One of the best things I've seen happening in Barry, have you seen Nonay Park down in South Barry? The improvements to that is phenomenal. It's a beautiful place. There is some good things to what's happening uptown here. Unfortunately, that's a mixed answer because some people don't feel the improvements are improvements. Other people feel they are. From what I understand, our school system is trying to work forward and get better. I know one of the best things that's happening for this town is the fire department's merging with the rescue squad. That's actually a really good thing for this town. And one way or another, our public safety office is going to be filled within the next month. That should be a very good thing. And that's about all I have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Irvin, what would you find some of the good things happening here in the town of Barry?
Some of the general community things that go on, which I think are very important, are like our local food drive, the farmers market, even the Barry Theater, the Barry Players Theater. These are, some might say simple, but to me these are important where you recognize that your neighbors are taking care of your neighbors. You're not really always asking someone else to take care of it for you. You feel a sense of empowerment in helping each other and helping yourself. I do agree also that improvements to like what Bob was saying, Nonay Park, is another thing that helps bring the community together and is a good thing for the community. I believe that there is a direction that may not have been well explained, but the town is trying to make a balance and improvement in business opportunities as well as keeping kind of the heritage that Barry is, but it's a difficult blend, but there is a goal to where you can have both. I just think right now we're in that rough spot, but it's the progress we're making in that is you just got to keep pushing through and work out the details between the various factions. I also agree about the public safety building. But generally, I just think we got a lot of good people in town, and when they're asked, they step up and help each other.
Thank you. Now it's your turn. We're going to wait just a second. Mr. Tim is going to turn that one off. That might make it just a touch easier to hear. A little warmer for us, but a little touch easier for you folks to hear. So now, I'd like to see the first hand in the air. Would like to ask a question. Gentleman in the navy blue, he's right there. Could I ask you to say who you are before you ask your question?
Yeah, like the candidates. My name is Brian Bukowski, and I moved to Barry in 1950. We all agree today that we have a beautiful town. We love the town. A lot of good things happening in the town. We all agree with that. But what can we assure you? Decisions that have to be made for the selectmen that are not always easy. With that, questions from Madam Moderator, all three candidates need to pick the order in which they speak. What do you perceive to be the most significant challenges facing the town of Barry in the next 2 years of your term? And as a selectman, how would you seek to solve it?
We started with you, so Mr. Milkman, you get to go first this round, and then we'll go 1, 2, and then 3. Try to keep it fair that way.
One of the biggest problems I see right now is our school system. The budget to our school system is not a agreeable issue right now, and even I can see it even for the next couple of years, trying to rise again, and that's going to be a big issue. Foreseeably in the near future, whoever comes on as selectman, getting a little reverb here. There we go. One of the things the new selectman is going to have to decide on is what's going to have to happen with our public safety chief's office. Selectman is going to have to make a decision whether, and that decision could have serious repercussions, as one of the previous selectmen found out. That's a real serious decision they have to weigh on. And in the long term is, I know our contract is coming up, I believe it's next year with the landfill company, because I know a lot of town residents also had a lot of big issue with the price raise of the using the landfill. I know there's other companies, and it can be researched. But, another one that some people might not find to be significant, I do, because I really like our farmers market. The new curbs, the people going to the farmers market aren't allowed to pull on the lawn anymore. They have to hand carry everything. That was a big issue with a lot of the people I talked to up at the farmers market, and it's one of the reasons why the farmers market is half the size it has been in the past. And some of the farmers, people there told me that's one of the reasons why some of the people chose not to come anymore. So, in the near future, that's some of the things that the selectmen are going to have to make decisions on. And hearing from the people of the town will be very important on those decisions.
Thank you. Mr.
Short-term challenges, I initially would say identifying the new police chief. Currently, we are under an interim. So until that's resolved, that's going to be a challenge that we need to address. I've stated in the paper, I supported the existing police chief. I still do support. We'll have to continue to move forward, and again, as I said, see what the town wants, but so far, other people I've spoken to, I still want to talk to a lot more people. It seems to be a direction they want to go. Until I hear different, that's the direction I would go. I think the bigger issues in town would be not just businesses, bringing businesses to town. We need something that keeps people in town. When our population tends to drop, a lot of people don't realize it, but what it really is also doing is dropping the town's income. You have a tighter budget in the same infrastructure to maintain. And right now, we're kind of tipping point. If we keep going down between houses for sale, people moving out of the school district, or even living here and going to other school districts, what we end up doing is we're reducing our funds to maintain our own town. And we need to come up with plans that encourage people to stay here. Try to encourage businesses that actually create employment opportunities here, not a half hour or 45 minutes away. There's a balance with that that's not easy. And that's what I mean between introducing business and opportunities and not losing our feeling of Barry still being quiet enough and conservation minded and farm minded, wanting to keep some of that in town, but still allowing something that brings people here to work. That will definitely increase some of our funds to address the issues we have as a town. That would be my biggest focus, is addressing our financial situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are several issues that I would like to address over the next 2 years. Above and beyond taking care of day-to-day responsibilities as a selectman, we need to think about some bold moves that'll take us to the next 20 years down the road, to think ahead of where we want to go, what we want to be, because without a roadmap, any road will get you there. So I hope to address some of these issues. The top three that Mr. Kamowski asked, I guess my number one would be the youth of Barry. You know, the devil makes work for idle hands. And when the children get off the school bus at the end of the day, that's a long time before 8 o'clock the next morning. They need to be engaged, they need to be challenged, they need to be the best people they can be, not only by their parents, but by resources the town can make available. So I would hope that this would be on the front burner for this town to make this a great place for the kids to grow up. The second thing I guess I would say would be taxes. And I would like to see our tax rate start to go down. A few years ago, our tax rate was a little over $14. Now it's almost $19 a thousand. And with all the spending that was approved at the annual town meeting, it looks like we might be over $20 within another year. So I'd like to address the situation of living within our means, seeing how much we have in income, and spend less than we have coming in, so we actually are saving. And the third thing I think that I'd like to talk about is safety. I think that going through what makes a town great, I was very surprised to learn the number one thing that makes a town great is its walkability. And I think with the improvements in the downtown area here in Barry, the streets are safer with the sidewalks. There's a lot of thought has gone into the traffic patterns. There should not be any accidents going forward. Also, in South Barry, there's going to be more work done on sidewalks there so that people can actually get up on a Sunday morning and walk to church. They can walk to church on nice sidewalks that are safe and not covered with brush. So those are the three things that I'd like to mention tonight, but there are a lot of other things that I hope to be able to accomplish in the next 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins.
This is my concern.
I need to have you identify yourself.
I'm Jim Higgins. We moved down the past 6 years. I'm married to a long-time girl. One of my concerns
Back up just a
I'm
step.
very concerned about
Back up just a step. There you go.
without safety on the town side of the road. I think it's sad. The number one, I sat in that spot and when we made 45 years ago, they got several people. And I'm seeing it go by. Right? Right down the mile. We have to call out of town to service our own town. And 45 years ago, we were only 8 people. Back in the Cadillac ambulance and Pontiac wagon. Now we've got 2 ambulances, $75,000 a piece of service and ride over there. And I have to listen on my scanner that we have about pounds per minute in service. My fellow citizens and I took care of years ago. And now I see it being this bad. I hope that's one of the concerns that will be raised out by whoever gets in. Because right now, it's 75. And that can be one of the concerns as far as one of the answers and the police. Because right now, it's a problem now. And I'm sad that it's going that way. And I hope that something can be done about the whole safety issue inside. You know, I can do another thing, because I've been thinking about that. I've seen a lot of change. And like I said, it's hurting me real bad. With that organization that we're trying to do that.
So your question to the gentleman is, what do they see as selectmen that they should do to help the ambulance service? All right, so that's your question. Mr. Urban, it is your turn to start first. Thank you, John.
I do recognize this as being a big issue. Starting from the idea that I've heard about combining the fire and the ambulance, but no details. So I'll have to admit, from my distance and with the knowledge that was currently available at the time, that I was learning some of this. There's a lot for me to still learn about why we wanted to put them together and the benefits or the negatives to either side of that, whether it's the fire or the EMS. I still need to learn more on that. But in my opinion, we need to put a focus on all three. I also believe ambulance, EMS, it's very critical to have that close. It's not near the benefit if somebody's already got to take 20 minutes just to get into town, let alone across town to wherever you're at, either due to not having the right personnel or the right trained personnel available in order to meet the state standards so you can send your own ambulance. I think we would need to look into the costs involved, but at the same rate, we need to make sure we provide the services to the town. So for me, the first thing is we've got to figure out all the steps it takes to bring that service back to a level that allows us to be the first ones to respond to issues in Barrie. And even be the primary responders to some of our local towns rather than them calling other towns for help. I think we're in a situation where we can actually be the center for a lot of them if we can make the right investments and build it up. We have a lot of towns around us that could really appreciate and depend on the services we could provide. If we can plan for it, fund it, and rebuild it. A lot of what I just said was specific to just the EMS service, but I believe it also applies to both the fire and the police, where all of them are continually needing to be. You've got to pay attention to the required training. You've got to plan for it. You've got to put it into your budgets. You've got to know what it's going to cost. Because if things slip, you never get the money back. You never get the time back. And then you start hobbling around saying, how are we going to do this? And you're just not prepared. So to me, it's you got to build the picture now and plan for it. You can't just jump into it and say, let's do it. So that would be my goal.
Thank you. Mr. Roper,
I have every confidence that our fire department and EMS are in good hands. I think Rob Rogowski is going to do a fantastic job, and in the tradition of his dad. So I'm not concerned that we're not doing the right thing. I think that we have great leadership in those departments, and I'm looking forward to having Barry considered the #1 place. If you're going to need an ambulance, you better live in Barry. They're going to take care of you.
Mr. Milkman.
Okay, I think Jim's question was, how are we going to staff the ambulance? I'd like to ask a question, because I know I was at a town meeting, I believe it was even a selectmen's meeting that I was sitting in on. Bob, weren't we authorized full-time EMT now to go with our paramedics? So we're going to have a new full-time position that I happen to be sitting in one of the selectmen's meeting when that was authorized. That way our paramedics have somebody to work with them full-time. If I was on the selectmen board, I would also hope that we'd also consider a second part-time position to go along with that full-time, because that would augment even more of our call people. What a lot of people don't understand about our EMS is it's a call EMS. It's a call system. So when people are volunteering their time, just like our selectmen, volunteering their time, they can only choose so much time in between what they do full-time for work, what they're juggling on for other things. That was one of the reasons why I know we got a full-time EMS person now, or looking for one. I don't know if the person was hired yet. Still looking, Bob? Oh, it's done? I just happen to be unique to answer that because my ex-wife that I talked about has been on the rescue squad since pretty much we came to town. So I'm hoping that answers your question, Jimmy, that we actually have people coming on full-time to augment some of the spots when the call people can't be there anymore.
Thank you very much. Gentleman here in the front in the light blue, if you'd use the microphone for me, please.
My name is Sam Woodson. I live Street, which is 75. In the beginning, I used to use Barry's bedroom. I spent a lot of time in Worcester. Now I use Worcester as the bedroom because Barry wasn't here. My question is as follows. The school department, operating the school department, is being inundated with unfunded mandates. That unfunded, in other words, the requirements by the state. The school system state gradually is decreasing the funding. It's costing the town of Barry significant funds in order to support significant funds which come from our taxes in order to support these unfunded grants. So the question is, what short-term steps we can take in regards to the yearly increases in the Quabbin Regional School District budget? And what long-term steps we can take related to the budget as well, so that instead of the budget going up 6% a year, we can start going down 6%.
Thank you. I've lost track. Is it your turn, Jack, this time?
Well, that is a great question, and it's on everyone's mind. 80, between 60 and 80 cents of every tax dollar goes to support our schools. And I have every confidence in Maureen Marshall. She's a professional, and she's backed by a dedicated school committee. They tackle these problems every single day. They have children coming into the school district that have special needs. They have to be balanced with children that are leaving our school district, maybe that have graduated and completed 22 years of help from the school district. It's a challenging situation, but I believe we have experts and dedicated people addressing this every single day, and I have my full faith in them.
Like every time I've talked, I've mentioned the school's budget. It's an issue, one of the issues with this town, because kids are growing up. We aren't necessarily getting more families in town. People are getting older, and as people get older, if they don't have kids, they don't have grandchildren, they don't want to support the budget for the school most of the time, because that's money, they don't have that in their own budget. Right now, we're augmenting a lot of our budget by we have 3 busloads of kids coming from out of district just from Ware alone. That isn't counting Templeton, North Brookfield, West Brookfield. We get $5,000 per kid. Problem with that is it also adds to the classroom sizes. I happened to be at a school board meeting a couple weeks ago. I think Mr. Urban was there also. When we heard the committee ask the Maureen Marshall if she'd be willing to ask the teachers if they couldn't take a raise, if they were willing to not take a raise. But she also was not willing to ask the principals and the people that work in the administrative part not to take a raise. But she was more than willing to ask the teachers not to, who are sitting there right with our kids. I took one of my daughter's friends. My daughter, actually, I personally, because I have no faith in that school, I send my daughter to a different school district. But I took my daughter's friend out to dinner with us. He's in 8th grade. He was an AB student, passing into 9th grade in Quabbin High. He asked me to read his fortune because he couldn't read it. Her other friend, her female friend, her teacher told her she doesn't need to learn how to spell, she's got spell check. Well, guess what? Her spelling's so bad that spell check doesn't help if it's bad enough. I like our school systems. I wanted to send my daughter to Quabbin. My ex-wife wouldn't let me, because once she explained to me why, and once I talked to some of my daughter's friends, it's really crowded there, and it's not kids from our district. Right? that's one of the reasons why our taxes keep going up too, because we have to support all the extra people that are to take care of all those kids coming from outside of district. I know Maureen Marshall called the outside of district kids that we were sending out that needed special help. She ignored the issue of the 5, 6, 7 busloads of kids coming from other towns that are not part of the district, are not towns that pay towards the tax base. We get $5,000 per kid, and it costs, as she said herself, costs $14,000 to educate each kid, which to me that's $9,000 loss each kid. All right.
Short term, it's a very difficult thing to address because there's no magic button to press to resolve a budget issue that technically needed to be approved a month ago, and each week or month we go where different towns in our district are unable to afford the budget. More likely the state's going to come in and just say, this is the budget you got to pay, and we're just going to have to deal with that. Short term is short term. That's just what we're going to have to deal with. If we need to cut the budget, we talk about, even at the budget subcommittee meeting we had a couple weeks ago, it was brought up, maybe remove some of the teachers' coaches. The teachers stood up and actually requested that, saying we've had coaches for a few years. We think we understand the system and how to coach and work as teams to build up. So the coaches kind of did their job. They played their role. They taught the teachers how to teach. The teachers feel pretty good about it. So they're asking, well, when the budget's tight, why do we still pay for a coach that's been teaching us for 3 years, despite the fact we went to college and got our degrees and everything else that made us who we are? I think it's a good question. I'm not going to say that there's no benefit to the coaches. But what I'm going to say is I believe that the coaches may not have to be there every year. And when you got a tight budget, you got to make tight decisions, and it's usually not getting rid of a teacher, it's getting rid of their coach. And then bring the coach back when you have money again. Talking about students out of district, I think we could be a little bit more specific, because there is a form of funding that we charge the other districts. So if they come in and they have, I believe it's individual education plans or something that require additional funding, we literally just charge the town they came from. It's the state-placed students, not the school choice students, that we inherit the burden of the budget. And what long-term needs to be done to address that is we need to work with our state representatives and our state senators. And we need to try to work with them to understand that if the state's going to place students across the state into another district, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to say any of those reasons are right or wrong, the state needs to take on the financial burden. Because what they're pretty much saying is, this child needs assistance from the state as a whole. But then they throw it to another town and say, but it's just your town's job to pay for it. And I think we need to just make sure that the state understands that's not acceptable. If we're going to make them wards of the state, where the state needs to become guardians and take on financial responsibility, the state needs to fund it. Otherwise, if they come into a school, let them stay at the school that's teaching them, or don't call it a school. And I don't mean this in a very mean-spirited way. I just mean it's deceptive. And we need to be more open, and we need to request and generally demand the assistance when we're dealing with situations where the state throws it at you and says, deal with it. We can't accept it. And that's what we've got to do, is work with us representatives.
Is there someone else who has a question? I see a lady in the back here, near the white pole, yes, way in the back. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and ask your question, please. Whoops. Well, we'll bring it down so that we can actually hear you, dear.
I'm a white person in any public safety. This is a town that's having this crisis. I mean, this is a town put together for the people that had the crisis, and I can tell you right now there is hope for the people. We rally for their fellow townspeople. Whether they're fire, people are sick, no matter what happens. Neighbors come out, people you don't know, they come, they're good people. In saying that, my question is, this year I went to Great Watkins, and they put out an agenda, and if you wanted to ask a question, certain times you were allowed to be open to questions, and other times you were not. They picked and chose which topics would be commented on. And I believe that myself, other townspeople, if they took the initiative to take time out of their evening to go to the selectmen's meeting, to ask a question, or have some input, I think they should be heard. And my question is, and you have mentioned in your speeches that you're open to town people what they have to say, but at a selectmen's meeting, if you go in with an agenda, you might have an opinion already formed, would you be willing to take questions during the selectmen's meeting with anyone that takes the time to show up?
Mr. Milkman, I believe it's your first up.
I honestly think I might have already answered that question. When I said Mr. Lippman's at pretty much every meeting, and he asked questions, and I've sat in meetings and listened, and I thought to myself, you know what? That's worth listening to. It's always worth listening to somebody's question. Sam always said, every question I've heard him bring up was something that somebody needed to ask. You should really ask questions in a meeting. Otherwise, it's a one-sided meeting. It's not a meeting, it's somebody telling you what's going on. We shouldn't be sitting up here and wanting to be selectmen if we're not willing to listen to you at a meeting. I mean, we take our time to try to be selectmen, and you take your time, try to ask us questions and be at those meetings because you're showing concern. I agree with you. It's 100% that we should listen to people.
Mr. Irvin, your thoughts?
I truly believe that the form of town government that we have, for most people, that is the place for them to voice their opinion. They don't know how to contact the selectmen. They don't feel comfortable necessarily outside trying to talk to one selectman at a time, then find all three, tell each their opinion, when the truth is, the selectmen don't all live in the same house. They don't all work the same schedule. So you've got to be open and willing to hear people at the selectmen's meeting. I can understand that human nature, you can get frustrated. You can say, I've heard this story before. But you've got to sit back and listen anyway. And you've got to give the person the time and the respect they do for taking the time to show up and be involved in how the government's run. I think if you don't do that, you're no longer representing your town. And you've got to listen. It doesn't mean that you're always going to agree, but if you don't give them the time to speak, you don't give them an opportunity to voice their opinion, then you quit representing. And that's just my opinion. So yes, on every topic, everybody should have the opportunity to speak if they think they need to.
Thank you very much. Mr. Winter?
I've actually given this quite a lot of thought. And if I'm lucky enough to represent you, this is what I would propose. This is what I will propose. Right now, there are certain things that the selectmen have to do. They have to approve certain things. and those are agenda items. If someone has something that they want to bring to the attention of the selectmen, they call in, and they're placed on the agenda after all this other business has been taken care of. If I'm lucky enough to be your selectman, we're going to start the meetings with public comments. That could last a half hour. It could last longer. And there's not necessarily going to be, we're going to take the clock out of the selectmen's room, because we're going to be there to do the business of the town and not be worried about what time we're going to get home. I also want to add that my administration working in the selectman's office will be one of transparency. What I would like to see is a forum at the senior center held on a Thursday night where every single department in this town will make a presentation of 15, 20 minutes or a half hour on a Thursday night, and these meetings will go on for 3 months, longer if necessary. Each department, each elected official will get up and explain to the people of Barre what it is that they do. They'll make their presentation, and then it'll be opened up to questions. So I hope that I'm your selectman.
Thank you very much. How's everyone doing? I know it's a tad warm up here. How are we doing down there? There's still plenty of water left, so please stay hydrated. If you need to get up and get closer to the window or shift a little, we're going to put the fan on in the back, so when you come and ask your question, you're going to have to speak up just a tad, and then we'll be just fine. So may I have a hand or two? Who might like to be next? I saw yours first, sir. So come on down to our microphone. Remember, just give it a little speak up.
Good evening, my name is Joe Radowski. Been an employee by Town of Barre for 22 years. I have some things that I think are concerns. The selectmen can address them, or they can keep them. Years ago, we used to have a personnel board. Department head had a problem or needed to do something to their personnel. We used to make an appointment with the personnel board, and it consisted of a group of 7 or 8 people. We could go in front of that board, and I could plead my case, and maybe people would start asking questions, and we were told, we'd either walk out that it was a good idea or a bad idea. And the majority of the time, after people got their questions out, I walked out of it for my firefighters. Well, we've done away with that personnel board. We put a town administrator in charge of personnel. So we have one person now in charge of personnel. So she's actually judge, juror, and executioner all in one. So we usually, when you go in to ask questions, minds are all made up because the selectmen informed her which way to vote. So we didn't really have a say. And I would just like to ask you people if you could consider going back to a personnel board where we could get where the department heads could get a fair shake and the employees in that town could get a fair shake. I beg you people to go ask town employees in this town. I've been a town employee for 22 years, and I have never seen personnel, personnel, the morale in this town, as poor as it is now. And it is pretty poor. And if you people would go out and talk to the DPW, the sewer, the highway guys, the people that work in the town office, the firefighters, I think they would tell you the same thing. I would love to see this gone back to a personnel board where every town employee had their shake and gets treated equally. Just before I go, I just wanted to thank you people for stepping up to this. Whoever prevails in this election has a big, big job to show this town down now. So I thank you very much.
Sir, before you go, I have a question. because there may be some folks here who have not been a member of your town for a long time. My question is, these 7 or 8 people that served on your personnel board, were they just other regular citizens that ran for that position or were appointed by the selectmen? How did you become part of the personnel board?
I believe they were appointed, Dennis Fleming, that was sitting up front here, he was a member of the personnel board. Mary Ann Gendron, I believe, was the secretary for the personnel board at that time. I believe they were appointed by the selectmen.
They volunteered and the selectmen said, yes, ma'am, yes, you
And
may.
on a night that was off of the selectmen night, so you couldn't, you didn't get conflicts in, and you were able to go and sit in front of them, schedule an appointment, and sit down and bring out your views in front of them. If they thought you had good views, or they questioned you, and they thought you were good, you were approved, if not, then you went back to the drawing board and try again.
Thank you very much for answering my question as well. I believe we're back to volunteers. Mr. Rosa, you're back up again.
That's a great question, Joe, and I did not ask you to ask that question. I've been thinking a lot about this. And one of the reasons why the change was made from a personnel board to the town administrator, from what I understand, is that there was dwindling interest in serving on that personnel board. I think there's going to be a new level of excitement in this town and interest, and I would propose almost immediately that we look into bringing back the personnel board. I have had a couple of discussions with Charlie Chase. I don't know Charlie very well, although he lives about a half a mile from us. His brother John helped us clear land while we were expanding our alpaca farm. And his father, Russell, worked on our farm for 10 years before he retired 2 years ago. But I think that I can get along well with Charlie. I think we think a lot alike on some issues. And I'm hoping that, initially the two of us can do whatever we can to bring back the personnel board. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's time to reinstate it.
I agree with you 100%, Joe. Personnel board would be good. The only thing I ask if I became a selectman is to see a bunch of names, people volunteering. So I'm more than willing to put people on create a board, as long as you can see the people that are willing to volunteer. I have no problem with it. And another board wouldn't be hard in town. There's plenty of people in this town to volunteer for a board. So I agree. A personnel board would probably be better than having one person making all the decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin, your thoughts?
I support the whole concept of the personnel board. I generally support the concept of the town being involved as much as possible in how the town runs. I think even just opening the idea of a personnel board, kind of like what John was saying, is the right time. People want to be involved now. It's a little different world than it may have been 10, 15. Changes are happening. There's a lot of people out there that, whether it's social media, whatever, you have younger people that are paying attention more than they may have before. And I think we need to maybe even use this concept to encourage new generations to continue to participate in their town government.
Thank you. I'll take a half a second break. I just noticed that all three of you got in the backwater. It's warm up here too, so we don't want any of these guys to. All right. I have been given a couple of cards, some things that folks are saying to us that we would like to pass on and then have you gentlemen speak on. The first was, what can you do to bring the sense of community back to our town? And the complimentary note from another constituent, it is said that there is something that is very hard to earn and easy to lose. That is a good reputation. As elected representatives of the town of Barry, your personal and public actions reflect upon our community. Please comment on the role of integrity and trustworthiness, as well as the sense of community that that brings. And I believe, Mr. Whitman, you are first on this question.
The first part of the question is, what can we do to bring a sense of community back to this town? Well, one thing, big thing that divided this town, or actually brought this town together more than it divided it, was the chief of police. We need to bring back our chief of police, and I'm more than willing to consider Eric back on the police force. One of the first people I met when I moved to town, believe it or not. And it wasn't in a bad way. I think it was at something uptown with my ex-wife and daughter, and he was up there with his wife and stepdaughter and daughter. But bring back the sense of community for the town. One thing is have the town actually, if more people can get involved, like in the summertime with these concert series, we have 2 beautiful concerts going on every weekend. It's a beautiful, the people get together and talk, and the farmers market is another thing that brings back this community. I think a selectman, as far as what they can do for to bring a sense of community to the town, is find the people in where they are, whether they're at the concerts, whether they're at the farmers market, go there and get their opinions. Get your opinions on what's going on in town. Get your opinions on what is wrong with the town. That's how you bring back a sense of community, because when you can see that the town is trying, someone that works for the town is trying to get what you want for the town, that shows the town that you're trying to do something for the community. The other part, that was a little obscure because I don't know if it actually had much to do with the community. That was a personal reference. I don't drink. I hang out with my ex-wife, and I work. There isn't much to me. I don't even smoke cigarettes. So besides going home and after work, there isn't a lot I'm going to do to embarrass the community. I know I did go through a divorce in this town, but like I said, I even live with my ex-wife. So I think my personal issues were pretty much not going to embarrass the town.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Mr. Irvin, your answers to these questions.
Regarding the sense of community, I think one of the biggest things, and it kind of touches on what John had brought up before, is working to create programs that involve the children. Part of that will also help give them something to occupy their time, a sense of empowerment, a sense of self-respect. All of that helps divert them from bad drug habits, looking for just vandalism, things like that are just, I'm bored. Well, you get the right groups together and you work together, all of a sudden you're not bored. You pretty much got a volunteer workforce that wants to make this town something that's beautiful and maintained and you got little projects, you want to redo the gazebo, all of a sudden you got 15 kids that are all showing up with paintbrushes saying, let's go. But generally that takes adults to start the process, to show them how to organize, show them how you go about getting funds for the materials and how to work together. So I think part of developing your community is bringing the kids into the process because they maintain the community. Eventually, we're going to move on, and it's that next generation that needs to maintain the community. And I think we could use a little bit more of the programs that bring the kids out. But I will have to admit, again, I've only been here 4 years. So there are programs out there. I'm not saying we have none. So please don't take that as a negative. I'm not diminishing your efforts. I just believe there's more we can do. When it comes to integrity, I believe that's the biggest thing of any individual. You've got to be able to say what you mean and stick to it. And if you're not sure you know, don't say something just to say something. You need to be educated on it. If you don't have the information, don't give an answer that someone wants to hear. That's pretty much the strongest way to maintain your integrity. Because you're not going to have to come back to that person later and say, I lied, or I was wrong, or I misled you, or I misinformed you. If you don't know, say you don't know. If you say you're going to do something, follow through and do it. Sometimes that means you got to put more time in than you thought because you couldn't do it in the time you thought you had. So sometimes integrity is all about your work ethic as much as it is what you say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wakefield?
I think that one of the biggest things about a community is actually to meet, listen to the stories of people you don't know, and get to know them. I think we will have this series of meetings at the senior center where everyone in town is going to meet every person who works in the Henry Woods building, the DPW, the fire department, and the police department. And I think meeting these people and getting to know them will go a long way to create a sense of community. I also suggested to Charlie Chase that he hold a special meeting for the selectmen the day after the election on August 10th, where I would propose that we rehire the chief.
I see a hand up quickly in the back. Come on down to our microphone. I want to thank all of you. You have had some very interesting and very thought-provoking questions. I want to thank our candidates for answering the questions and staying on track so we can keep them moving and get a lot more questions answered. Sir, your name and your question.
Good evening, my name is John Randall. The candidates have spoken about opening selectmen's meetings to more comments. The fact, and Mr. Lathrop proposed a series of meetings at the senior center. My concern is that most of the people in town don't attend meetings unless they are a town meeting or something that they have a particular interest in. I'm wondering if the candidates could comment on plans to utilize services of the press that covers Barry, both the Gazette and the TV, the use of social media. I have learned an awful lot about what's going on in town by looking at Chief Eric's Facebook page when he was chief. And that's not strictly the role of the chief of police, but certainly is something that I think could be forthcoming from the selectmen to help deal with the feeling that an awful lot of people have that there are decisions being made in town that are completely opaque. And
It's you.
Okay, I'm not quite sure how that was a full question, but it's a thought, so if you proceed on those thoughts.
I generally agree with the comment, the statement, and I mean, personally, in that idea, I created my own candidate for selectman page on Facebook just to try to get my name out there. Thankfully, the Barry Gazette requested information from all of us and posted it. I agree that all of these means are means to get the reason we're suggesting to go in a certain direction out to the public. I think one of the other things we need to do is make ourselves available, and sometimes that's not just in person. We might be able to do a better job advertising the select board's email address, letting people know that if they're willing to send emails. And the reason I say that is emails come from one person. And so the more emails you get about a topic that say the same thing, the more you realize more than one person is thinking that thought. Facebook also has a very similar means for people to have that. I think we need to go beyond just electronic means though, because we have multiple generations we're working with and they have different comfort levels in communication. So yes, there are going to be times where I got to be more visible and quit just hiding in my barn trying to build screens on my old house that has no screens. Which means maybe you'll see me down at some coffee establishment, whether it's Dunkin' Donuts, Becky's Bistro, Cozy Cabin, or I'm sure there's more out there, but like I said, I've only been here 4 years. I'm still trying to figure out where I like to hang out. But if you see me, yeah, say, hey, you got a moment? And then tell me what you think. And we got to be willing sometimes to make that time. Now, God bless you, don't knock on my door. I do ask you to call ahead at least if you want to meet me. But yeah, if you see me out and about, yeah, go ahead. Just ask for my attention and let's see if we can make the time. If I'm busy, we'll make the time.
Thank you. Mr. Levitt?
Well, every once in a while, we hear the dogs bark. We have 2 Shetland sheepdogs. Nothing happens on our farm without them alerting us. And it's generally somebody who's pulled their car over or stopped in the driveway to look at our alpacas. So if you want to come and visit with me or my wife, just pretend you're there to see the alpacas. In my comments to the Barry Gazette, the nice article that Ellie Downer wrote, I listed as one of my goals is to have a state-of-the-art website for transparency, for communication, for everything that it can be. And social media is going to be very important when we get past the day-to-day things that have to be done in this town, and we reach and stretch for things that we'd like to see happen. And to get those ideas across and to get support for those ideas, we will be using social media to a great extent. And also the Barry Gazette and the Travelers and Gazette, the Barry website that we currently have, and perhaps the selectmen will have their own little special website to get their word out. But I think when we're going to be doing some really great things in Barry, we're going to need all of these resources to get the word out.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Okay, now I know minutes are taken at the meetings, and except for when you go into executive session. I think, thanks to Joe over there, a lot of what's talked in an executive session is personnel stuff. If we do have a personnel board, that'll get rid of that, won't it? Then there'll be minutes to the board, personnel board. The minutes to the meeting should be posted I believe it 100%. I've had people, as soon as I put in my papers to be selectman, somebody called me. So found me, because I didn't give any information except for where I lived. But you know what? I gave that person their time. We'll always give people time. But I also believe if you're a selectman in town, they should have a town email address. That way people, like Mr. Urban said, people can ask you questions. Because an email address is the best way. You're not necessarily your own personal email address, because you got to be able to sort through what's town business and what's your own business. That's very important, because then you don't want stuff, say Mr. Higgins, I'll use you as an example, wanted to email me. If it went into my personal, it may go into my junk settings. But if it went into a town account, it'd automatically go to me. And that's just because it's the way electronics is filtered through. But yes, I believe the Barry Gazette should be able to get their hands on every bit of minutes. The Telegram should be able to get the minutes to the town meetings. I noticed our website, been on it many times, isn't necessarily updated. Matter of fact, some of it's pretty far behind. But yes, to answer the question, I believe everybody should be able to get in touch with the selectmen, and all the media, social media and regular media, should have the information also. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw his first, and then I will go to you. You're the next question after his. Sorry I didn't see you quicker.
My name is Phil Tucker. I happen to be a great planning board question from the way from that. And Francis' questions on I think all three of you would consider selecting the police chief again to the province. I understand that the police chief search committee is underway, and I'm asking if you've read the consult report regarding the police department and what you think of it, and if you're so inclined to consider the province again for police chief.
You went first, so back to you, Mr. Lakeman.
Okay. In the absence of extenuating circumstances, I favor rehiring Eric. Now, I realize that there are other applications that have come in. They need to be looked at. I have not seen them. I don't believe anyone has seen them other than the committee that Phil sits on, looking for candidates and honing them down from 18 or 20 applications to 3 or 4. So certainly, I will take that into consideration. I'm leaning towards Eric, period.
Thank you.
I also am leaning towards Eric, but I do personally, I always have questions, and I actually have 3 questions for Eric, but I wouldn't ask him those questions unless I was on the selectment board. I just want to answer just those answers, and I just want them private from Eric before I finish my decision. It's not that I don't like him, but like I said, one of the first people in town I met. But I just want to know 3 things from him personally before I finalize my decision. And then after that, then I'd be willing to rehire him. Because you know what? He was doing a job, he was doing a tough job, and I know for a fact it was the police union, because I was told I heard I was in a board meeting when they said, somebody said something. You shouldn't be able to get rid of your chief, your boss. You can't get rid of your boss just because you all have a problem with them. They're still the boss. The chief needs to be able to make tough decisions. The chief isn't necessarily going to be somebody that's liked by the police officers. Doesn't. As long as they know he has their back, and then that's all that matters. Public safety. It's just like being in the military, which I did spend 10 years myself. You have to be able to have somebody's back. And whether you're the sergeant, the lieutenant, whether you're the captain, you have to have, not everybody's going to agree with you. In fact, sometimes nobody agrees with you, but you're the boss. We can't just get rid of somebody just because people under them don't agree with them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin, your thoughts on this?
I did read the report that was posted. I noticed it was posted on Facebook, possibly by Informing Barry, that page, as well as some of the redacted executive session meeting minutes. I found no reason that justified removing the police chief because of those issues. I do agree that there can be issues. You can have people below you that don't agree, but that exact report actually said he didn't do anything wrong. It states there was a toxic situation. In my mind, that should have never made it to the select board in the manner that it did. If there were true grievances, there's a true process to follow, and it wasn't. People started talking to people without filing official complaints through the collective bargaining agreement that allows them to do that. It led to other issues, and it brought in a select board that shouldn't have been involved in it at that time. That exacerbated the situation and made it more toxic because people that did not run the police officers involved were telling them that their chief was wrong. You supported generally undermining the chief even if you didn't intend to do it. And I don't mean this, I'm not trying to blame anybody. I think everybody thought they had best intentions involved. I just think the end result was not fair to the chief. If you're going to make that move, you should have made that move immediately and not had as many discussions as I've heard occurred outside of the board meeting with people that weren't the chief. And because of that, that's why I fully support putting the chief right back into the position he was removed from. And I believe the select board should no longer be involved with personnel decisions, and it's another reason why I support a personnel committee. Because we did not do it right.
And that was Tony Fields, would you please make your way to the microphone? I'm glad that all of you are still sticking with us. It's warm out, we appreciate this. There's a lot of issues for your town. Thank you. Just back up a step. Yeah, back up.
In the time I think I spent my time volunteer work, reinstated the Almond program. I assisted with the marketing for this program. I served on the Keynote committee for the research project for about a year. I served on Meals on Wheels, I volunteered in the library, patient advising for appreciate the question about integrity, and it's my question. I come from a profession background in I appreciate this
Thank you. Mr. Lathrop, question was directed to you.
I'd be happy to answer that question. My dad always instilled in me that your integrity says everything about you. And I hope that I have lived my life with integrity. If I've done something that people question, I take a look at it, I discuss it with them. I have 42 years working in the financial industry, and there's a system set up for complaints that come into stockbrokers, and it's a folder called your U2. And in 42 years, I never had one complaint come in as a result of the work that I did. So I'm very proud of my background, and I think I have incredible integrity. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. You haven't had a chance before, right? Nope.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bob Paradise. I've been in town for 20 years and been in emergency services for 16 years. BLS coordinator for various services. I apologize if this starts off as a commentary. Chief Joe Rogowski is right. The frustration level and the morale is very, very low in emergency services departments. It's been trying 10 or 11 months for a number of officers and issues across multiple departments. We have a group of dedicated, great people in all of the departments. They do a lot, they train a lot, they want to be there doing this for when emergency services. In the past, well, MERS in particular, I should say, with EMS and fire, Chief Joe Rogowski at that time, myself, and the other at the time, found out about it through social media, newspaper articles, and talked about it at the coffee shop. This is a frustration that I brought up in previous that's not how you should be finding out change your department. Should be open dialogue, transparency, discussion before decisions are made at another department, so that if people don't come to you and say, oh, we're changing this, or we're doing that, and you tell them no, and they have egg on your face later, because yes, I guess that was the case with you not informed at all. So my question is, well, a little bit more commentary. Yes, Mr. Milman, you are correct. They did hire a full-time EMT. We're positive momentum now to get that ambulance staff as it should be, as it was in the past. That's something that I continue to work on. That's very, very important to me. So my question, I guess, and you touched on it, I think, numerous times throughout the meeting already. If elected, do you intend to keep 100% open transparency with decisions that are made in all the departments, with those department heads, department staff, before decisions are made? Question, open dialogue. We touched on social media as a conversation 20 minutes ago. That's how I found out about a lot of the changes going on in emergency services. That's incredibly frustrating for some of you as people come to and ask me questions. What do you do with this? How are we handling that? And you don't have an answer for them, or you without talking to the departments about it, seems to be just that knee-jerk reaction. I would appreciate, as a department member, that you guys do that. So my question, I guess, do you intend to keep that 100% transparency in all decision making? Social media is great, but not how you should find out about change.
All right, I believe, although Mr. Lathrop, the last question was directed directly at you, I believe it is your turn to answer the panel of three. It is your turn to start.
Well, I have great faith in Rob Rogowski. I think he's going to do an incredible job. I think he's going to handle that department in the outstanding manner that his dad did. I don't anticipate any problems. And if something like you suggested arises, I think that there'll be an immediate phone call to Rob Rogowski to see what the situation is and how it can be handled.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question anyways, Bob, that was a good question. I personally, as far as transparency, to actually answer your question, I believe anytime anything is brought in front of the selectmen and it involves one of the town offices, one of the town departments, a memo should be sent out and the people involved should be directly notified while it's still in the discussion stage before any decisions are made. That way you can be there when the discussions are being done at the meetings, and you can have all the same information, because if I'm on the board, I'm not going to hold it back from you. I'll give you the same information that I have. That way you have any reason why I'm being asked to do something before I make a decision, and that way you can make a decision, or the chief can make a decision, or the fire chief can make a decision, and tell me what they think, or what the board, tell the board what they think before we make a decision. That way we can weigh in on your side of the, and we can also show you why a decision or even a discussion was brought in front of us, because that's important to me. And also, you're right, just merging you guys, I know personally, the headache, because I discussed with you one night, all the headache is going to be to get relicensed to be with the fire department instead of by yourself. There is a lot of red tape, and when we change stuff in town, you got to realize people learn to licensing, especially our EMS. So we got to make sure the licensing is taken care of, or see how bad and how much it's going to cost the town to do that licensing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin.
I believe any decision like that needs to start with the respective departments, and it's got to work its way back up to the top. If it's starting at an administrative level or select board, I would say that 90% of the time that's because there's some financial reason, and we need to go back to the departments and figure out how we can resolve the financial issue. Sometimes that may be merging departments. That's fine, but we need to know what it's going to cost us to do it, and we need to know how that hierarchy will work moving forward. And that needs to be discussed before we present to you as a topic we're going to discuss. In other words, the select board has a certain role of approving these things, but we have an administration that works with the various departments, and I think we have over time developed some gaps in communication. I think we need to work towards filling those gaps. And I think what some of the select board members can do outside of the actual select board meeting is take the time to talk to the various department heads, the various department members, and learn what's going on. Just inform ourselves. And then we can work with the administration and speak also from that perspective. So we better understand how the whole thing's going, and we also personally know that all the members that we're discussing are involved, also know that we're discussing this. Again, this is generally when you're talking about organizational and processes and procedures. There are times where things need to be discussed. Again, this would be more personnel committee type stuff. Before you go to the person and say, we're going to talk about you. So I'm talking about this department needs this and it needs help from that department. How do you work together? Well, you got to talk to both departments before you come to them and say, this is how you're going to work together. I think it's very important to understand because they do the jobs day to day. They understand the operations and the efforts. And if we just kind of make assumptions that these things can blend, we're setting ourselves up for more than just employee discontent. We're going to fail. There's going to be gaps that we can't fund because we didn't ask the right questions. We didn't know the right questions to ask. Because we started at the top and then we told the bottom that this is what you're going to do. And the bottom said, oh, by the way, this is what you got to do if that's what you're going to do. And at that point, we've already passed budgets. We've already moved forward. And we're kind of stuck. And I think sometimes that's where we need to be willing to take more time to make these decisions rather than rush these decisions. We got to make sure all department heads are involved when all departments are involved.
Thank you. So we're moving towards 9 o'clock. Is there additional questions from the floor? Okay, let me just make sure that nobody else has a question. You've had a chance. Is there anyone else who hasn't asked a question that would like to? I know that several of you had cards, and I don't think you had a chance to ask a question previously, did you? No, you did not. I apologize. Yeah, I was
I
gonna
got
say, I think we should have the door shut. We're getting them. We're gonna get, the poor boys up there are gonna get, picked up and carried away. Okay, give him just a half a second to come up and get the door so that we don't get picked up and carried away.
Shorts to get in my legs.
You can ask the question.
Just take a sec. Get rid of the bugs.
I think they're already too late. Yeah, I think they're already in here.
Yes, we don't get any more.
We got one.
Yes, you have one.
You can see all the mosquitoes buzzing you guys.
Two.
Terrific.
Didn't need enough garlic. That's my problem.
All right, and I believe it will be Mr. Milkman, it's your turn to go first when we get our question. All right. And now I think we're ready. Ask your question, sir.
Hi, my name is Dennis Fleming. I want to say thank you for the nice stuff you have. Very important. I have a statement and a question. The statement is I want to reiterate what former fire chief Joseph Yagowski said about the personnel board. We need that happen. This stuff that happened with the chiefs didn't happen if that was still in place. Second, there is a civilian law enforcement review board. There are members that belong to that board, but there are members that got ill and not on it anymore. We need to advertise to get people back on that board so that there is an avenue for people who may have complaints with the police department or members of the police department have to go to transportation. The whole purpose of the civilian law enforcement review board is to protect the town from frivolous lawsuits and whatnot. If anybody's unaware of what it is, the definition is not a complex thing. My question to all three of you, would you be in favor of the board of selectmen pushing or advertising to get more people interested to serve on these boards? Because a lot of people got off, very good people got off boards because of the question. There's a lot of good people in this town that can serve on those boards,
Mr. Milkman?
Sorry. Yes, I just wanted to answer your question, but I wanted to wait till you actually were looking. um, yes, I'd be willing to have one of those advertisements, but the best way to do it is we have a lot of boards in town. Ask the people on all. There's only 3 selectmen. There's, from what I saw in one night of marathon of different town meetings, there's quite a few different board members on different boards. A selectman should just ask the board members also of all the other boards if they know somebody that's willing to sit on a board, if they know somebody that's willing to take part in town government, and suggest to them that everybody, not just the selectmen, but all the boards in the town, try to get the message out that we need people on all different boards, and the civilian review board of the police. I think that would be the best way, to be honest with you, because that'd get it out quicker through word of mouth. Because not everybody reads the paper, not everybody reads the social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milkman. Mr. Irvin, your thoughts?
Well, yes, I'm in favor of both boards. The personnel as well as, I forget how it was described, the civilian.
Civilian Policing Board?
Thank you. I just didn't remember the accurate title. I believe that comes right back to the whole concept of community. We've discussed it under different various questions presented. And similarly, the same outreach to develop that community is the same thing that develops the people that want to participate in these boards. I think one of the biggest things, though, we need to do when we participate in boards is remain respectful and professional even when we disagree. I think a lot of times you lose that, and that's when people start feeling like they're not welcome. That's when people stop wanting to participate. There are not a lot of people that are like Sam Lipson, that'll just say what they think and get beat down and then come back and say it again. Or say something different and have someone say, all right, I heard it. And then say, you know what, you didn't hear it enough, and then say it again. Doesn't mean you like hearing it. You still got to be respectful, give them the time, and you have to do the same with your same board members on any board you participate in. So I think we've got to not just reach out to get people to be part of boards, but we've also got to just got to show general respect for the people in town. And if we do that, you'll find that these boards get filled much more often. We're not always going to be right. Even the select board, we're going to have positions we think we should be doing this or doing that. You have the right to remove us. You also have the right to just respect that we disagree. And I think we did that for years, because up until this last year and a half, I never saw a person competing to the incumbent selectmen and women. Sorry. Same thing on the other boards. If you're doing your job and you show respect for the other members of the board, it'll be successful and more people will continue to participate.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin?
I'll repeat myself in that I think there's going to be an incredible level of excitement and interest in this town starting on August 10th. I'm in full agreement with Joe Rogowski about bringing back the Personnel Board. And the fact that Joe, over the last 40 years, has made decisions, has had to make decisions, life and death decisions, I think he'd be the great first candidate for the Personnel Board. As far as the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, I'm not familiar with that board. I'm not familiar with what they do. I intend to find out. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman here in the navy blue, you had another question?
A statement in the question. A couple of things that you said tonight really concerning me. The first, however, there was police chief issue, fire chief issue. I did not hate Colin. I do not believe in recall elections. There's a recall process. It's called annual town meeting. Now we're looking at, we spent anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 for recall. We're going to spend the same amount of money for the election on August 9th. So ask the question, we're going to put on a couple of concerns. Are we right in expecting that all three of you will prejudge any issue that comes before a vote is taken at that table without researching it and knowing the rest of the story? There was once upon a time all about it. Back in the old days, we would listen to radios that had tunes. Someone would give a whole opening statement, and then here's the rest of the story. So when it comes down to what you're doing right now, two of you got committed. And the third, Mr. Wilson, I don't know where he is, but I was interested in him when he talked about the schools, and he knows nothing about it. The other question that I have for you people, if in fact you have a meeting on August 8th, would you vote to set up another special meeting so that we can have 3 members of the Board of Selectmen and not just the 2, one elected and Mr. Fix? And you answered your own question with the personnel board, okay? And Mr. Hubbard picked right up on it. You have 7 individuals to serve on this committee who have met many nights and are going to be meeting a couple this week as well. Going over these things, all right? What type of message are you sending to them? We don't care what the hell you send in to us. We already made up our minds. I don't think that's right. Okay? And the what Mr. Irving stops at read this. You can't have referendum questions and special elections and everything else to do the job of selecting. You're the leadership of the town, you set the course. I heard tonight as well about Mr.
Lathrop.
that he's calling off what the tax rate, he didn't get that. But we talked about money. Never did I hear one person mention budget and finance committee. By far, the most important committee in any town. Okay? And with that all said, however, that the biggest point right now in town is that after 9 years, David Tuttle has stepped down as chairman of that committee. That's going to be one hell of work. Okay? The town affairs. He worked it 12 months a year. He knew the budget that would be called. I asked you, have any of you ever talked to Mr. Tuttle about the overall picture of the budget? Mr. Milton, maybe you should get out the club and your partners to Superintendent Marshall. She could educate you pretty well. Okay? But there's just as many people that have come into this town because of the education system that's in here. Okay? But it took 40 years to build. We're destroying in 40 days with all these cuts in there. And I understand it. It's not just Florida. But you have to understand that the school population is down throughout the state. Okay? And as far as school choice, I I was there in 1993 when we took on school choice. Okay? We had a demographic study from kids 2 years old to see what the space was going to be in each classroom. Because once you took them on, you rolled them all the way through high school. No problem ever took place because of school choice. And if you want to talk about buses with 45 kids at $5,000 a piece, yes, it cost $42,000 back then to run the bus. But I think that's pretty good business. All of the money, the capital stuff already in place, teachers, administration, lights, everything else is in place. All you do is add the children. When I left here, we have over 400 people that were school choice. I think today, we got 300 parents. Hell of a decrease. Last year, the school choice funds that were already spent for capital improvements and projects, $1 million went towards the budget. So when you start the budget process this year, Mr. Milton, you're already $1 million in the hole. And never mind the state not coming through with Chapter 70, Chapter 71, and all the funding and the transportation that we were promised years ago, 100%. They started to go down to 40%, reimbursement the following year. What I would ask you as a citizen in the next 2 weeks, keep in mind that any one of you people can be elected, whether it's on popularity or whatever it may be. Make sure you geared up and that you understand. Get out there and talk to the people. Talk to the people that are on the budget panels, and talk to your chiefs, talk to everybody else. Okay? And never mind assuming, or because Mr. Irvin was sitting out, you get 500 emails or something, then you know how people think. Well, I'll tell you, that's a small majority of people can organize that overnight. And as far as technology, I've seen it before and say, I don't understand it, I don't want to understand it. Okay, I'm from the old school. I would use a counting paper with 13 columns and a pencil to keep track of whatever I got to keep track of. And we've got a lot of old people in this town, self-included, that don't go on Facebook, not up to date on technology or anything else. We've got a great source in the Barry Gazette. Okay? Ms. Downey really reports a meeting, and I can have many of them that are factual. She doesn't read into it, she doesn't put her own opinion. That's where we should be. Okay? And get out there into the community. Let's say, community policing. Okay? You're going to be police commissioners someday. All right? And again, I'm very concerned. We have 5 elections right now this year. The town election, the student special, and the recall, the primary, and the presidential election in November. Okay? That's going to cost us. Has anybody looked into the fact that how much money do we have in the budget for the town clerk to run all these things? I don't know. I haven't looked at it. I would say a very selfless of the figures and understanding, because when the groups are over and left elected to hit the ground running. Thank you.
I appreciate your commentary and your summing up a lot of what we have heard this evening, sir, so thank you very much for your comments. I'm not sure I heard a question through that, but if you would like to say what the actual question was, I think I missed it, my apologies. So would they vote to have another election, to vote to have an election? So these 3 gentlemen are running for 1 position, and so that will make you a board of 2. And so then you're going to need to have another election to be able to fill a resignation that has occurred as well. So you'd have a board of 2 until November, after your August 9th vote, or until next April. So your question to them is, would you call for an election to go in concurrence with the presidential, or would you prefer, or would you suggest, your opinions, would you suggest that they hold off that next election until the regularly scheduled election in April? That is the question. I think you led, so I think, is it
I
Mr.
don't know.
Urban's turn? I've lost track in that.
I would vote to have that position replaced at the presidential election. We're already spending the money on an election. Pretty much the effort and the time spent will already be cost funded. So we should just plan on doing it then. There's no reason to delay getting the third party involved and getting us a full board. There was a second part to that.
I think that was the question.
Oh.
What point would you
I had a second thought to that though. I've got to remember when his term was going to expire. If his term was going to expire this coming April, was that the end of his? I would recommend this vote carry for 3 years and the months between November and April. So we wouldn't have to revisit the vote in April again. So I would just give him the 3 years and whatever, so we don't repeat it again, just so we can carry 3 men for a year and a half. We couldn't make that up? Okay. Then I would not do that, because I would not be allowed to. But I would put it on the table and ask and find out if there was a means.
Thank you. Mr. Latham.
First of all, if I'm fortunate enough to be a selectman on August 10th, hopefully if the reports are ready for the recommendation for the new police chief, I will read those in their entirety. And unless there's something extenuating that I find, I'm leaning towards Eric. So that's my answer to that question. As far as the second question, a lot is going to be determined by state law. Ellen Glidden is going to call, Ellen Glidden will advise the selectmen what their options are. I believe that we no longer have the option to hold this election during the primary, the presidential primary. It's going to be up to the selectmen, which is Charlie Chase, and hopefully myself, to listen to what is the most efficient way of holding an election and getting a third member on the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. Mr. Latham.
I'm a strong believer in a 3-man board of selectmen. And I apologize for losing your interest. I was talking more about the education than the finance part of it. As far as the school went. But as far as the board, if we can have an election at election time and save the town money, that's the best thing for it. Because I don't believe any major decision should be made in this town without a full board. Because not everybody's, because two people, we don't have the third person's opinion. That's why we have a 3-man selectman. And you're right, I did not commit like the other two, because like I said, I have 3 questions to ask. So, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, this lady over here has her hand up. If you could, please.
A lot of things said about this, when she said and others go. A lot of people said not enough information that how they make this. So you're saying that the November, August 10th, you're elected, you can have time to look at the
I believe if someone will read the transcript of my remarks, that I said that on the 10th of August, if I'm elected select person, I will look at the applications that are presented from Phil's committee. And if there's nothing that is extraordinary that would cause me not to support Eric, that I will support Eric.
You said earlier that on August 10th, you're going to ask Charlie Chase to put that right back in.
What
You said that earlier.
What I said is that I asked Charlie if you would hold a meeting on August 10th, because I believe the people of Barry want to see some action. And this would be immediate action. This would be action the day after we have 2 selectmen to make a decision.
And then you spoken to police officers to see what they have to say about this. It's their department. They're not saying anything negative. All the ones that departments who run, the way your departments who run. There's problems in there. I worked for the very police department for 33 years. And I know there are problems in there. Have you spoken to the officers and any people? To ask what's going on with their, either out here or whatever?
I have.
How could you do that? Someone in that they asked you to move.
I've talked with a number of officers, I've talked with Eric, and I am looking forward to reading the reports from Phil's committee.
Mr. Milkman?
I actually have talked to some of the police officers, and that's one of the reasons why I said I have 3 questions for Eric.
Mr. Urban?
The basis of my decision, based on the fact that I did review the report, I did review some of the redacted executive session meeting minutes that were presented, and I believe the biggest reason I support putting him back in position is because of the means by which we removed him. We did not follow the accepted procedures. We did not follow the collective bargaining agreement process. And because of that, I don't believe he was given a fair opportunity to present himself. And for me, I believe when that's the case, as a town, we need to stand up and recognize that. And we have the opportunity to put him back, let it happen, and if the police officers continue to have an issue, they could follow that process.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I couldn't hear you.
Third question.
Gentlemen, I would suggest you take her words under advisement. We have 2 weeks before the election. Perhaps you should sit down with Eric and sit down with some of the officers and try to get all of the story. And thank you for bringing that to our attention. And I would highly suggest that of you gentlemen to get the rest of the story before you make your decisions. Okay, before he has another opportunity, is there anyone else who has a question in the room? I'm just trying to be fair, sir. Seeing none, you're back up. Boom.
This isn't the first rodeo for the town of Barry. We've been through this before. We've been through this in the town president, regardless of how it plays out. I'll ask each one of you, the biggest issue with the town, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't have the answer, is, I've heard it 1,000 times. Do we have a strong chief or don't? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know?
So are you saying you're questioning the police chief, the fire chief, the chief in charge of the DPW?
No.
Which chief are you looking to be the strongest?
The two chiefs that were given notice in the law, 6 months in advance, it will not be reappointed. Whether or not Mr. Urban is taking the position that is not right, I would take the position that anybody that currently takes that job, you want, serving at the will of the selectmen, is proud to be important.
Gentleman in the yellow, please. Or it looks like yellow from here, I'm sorry, it's white.
Good evening, my name is Greg Sullivan. Sorry, the petition to recall and a lot of grateful in our town bylaws. The roots of my group and perspective. I'm happy to see all three gentlemen up here. You all have a great interest in the community and I understand our frustrations that we have. I saw the selectmen themselves, and have as they want to part of that. Community chief and police at the time for their business. And I think you guys understand where the town stands. You understand that we wanted input and we refuse that by the selectmen. And we appreciate that you are that input. That's my state. My question is simple for the three. We've heard a lot tonight. They've all asked questions. We've also been very grateful to what we're asking. Without slandering anybody's committee, you tell us something positive about each of yourselves that we can stand up different from
Mr. Milkman, it's your turn to go first.
What makes me stand out from Matt and Jack, my life experiences, the different things I've done, the 10 years I spent in the military, the time I worked in a group home, time I worked in a casino as the purchasing manager. My experiences are different than theirs. The fact that I'm willing to make decisions whether people get mad at me or not. I prefer to be going with the majority of the people in town with my decisions. That's why I'm hoping communications as well. But that's all I can say is my experiences and my life, the way my life has gone, is different than the people sitting next to me. That's why I'm hoping people vote for me, because my experiences were different, and I haven't just lived here. I love this town. My father's been here for like 25 years. But I also saw a small town get ruined, and I don't want to see that happen to this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I have to admit it's a difficult question to answer. Partly because of how you said not to necessarily be negative to others. I don't necessarily, and what I mean by that is, I have to admit, I don't know Jack and Bob very well. So for me to say that I have a quality that they don't have just after tonight might not be fair. But I would say that I work in municipal government for the city of Worcester. I understand purchasing laws. I understand the roles of various departments, budget, DPW, fire, police. I understand how they need to work together, but also have their own separation, a little autonomy to work their processes and make things happen. I actually have a special role with the city of Worcester where I'm dealing with a project that forces me to go into fire departments, go into police departments, go into DPW buildings, go into city hall administration facilities, and work with those groups to find out how we can improve their facility with energy and other upgrades that looked great on paper until you went and talked to the people. Someone says, oh, we'll save money, for example, by putting on these interlocks on the garage doors so they won't stay open more than 10 minutes at a time so we don't lose all our heat at the fire station. And then you go talk to the fire station people and they say, well, in the winter when I'm working on the engine, that door is open and half the truck is out and half the truck is in because I can't be outside to work on my truck. Well, that's how you learn this, is you talk to everybody and you got to get out there and work with each and understand from their perspective. So I'd say one of the qualities I might have is just that. I've had to work with a lot of different departments and understand their needs, and then take something that was already written as a contract and find a way to redevelop it to make it work for their needs.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Mr. Wakefield, please.
I thank you for the question, Mr. O'Sullivan, because that speaks so strongly to what I have to say. I'm a great listener. My wife might not agree with that, but I am a great listener. And after we get through the day-to-day activities that have to take place because of mandates or whatever comes before the selectmen, I've got dreams for Barry. And I know that the people of Barry have dreams. The people uptown, the people in South Barry, Trafalgar Square, the Italian section, Barry Plains, Wheelwright, High Plains. I would like to hear everyone's dream and see which ones of those we can accomplish. So I'm so excited about the future for Barry, and I'm a good listener. Please tell me your dreams.
Thank you very much. I do believe I saw a lady with her hand up. You're next.
Many people in this town have seen the power of slander. Slander is a power. And it can especially be a power like this one. But truth needs to supersede slander. So my question is not just involving the youth. It seems to have a whole lot of credit. But what would you do to expand that circle and do as much as you can? Not only to allow people of power to be serving the town, but to make sure, as much as possible, being given human nature, that good people are not slandered out of their positions. And, in reducing that to the lowest common denominator, instead of reflecting how many good people live in this town and make it a great place.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Irvin is first.
Starts with being the right role model. Recognize your own actions are potentially going to be mimicked. Similarly, you got to express and work towards inviting people that understand respecting each other is a key aspect of this whole town. And I believe the great majority of the town do respect each other, even when they don't agree. I think the biggest difficulty with this one right here is you're talking about how do you spread a culture. And it takes time. And it takes finding more and more people that agree with it and want to work together. And you keep that network going. and you support each other. And if slander occurs, you don't go out and slander back. You go out and just pick up the person that got slandered. And you hold them up strong and you let it happen. The more you point out the slander, the more you spread the slander across the town. Because everybody's going to hear it over and over and over. So I think that's part of it. You gotta work on the culture. You gotta work with people. People gotta hear it. They've gotta grow with it. I don't think there's a lot of bad people here. I just think some difficult times are coming. People kind of get stuck in the doldrums and they just start to grumble, and you get the standard office talk. And then all of a sudden you get little groups that talk to each other rather than talk all together. And when you get those groups, that it kind of promotes slander, whether you know it or not. Because you stop talking to the other people in the other groups. And we got to break that a little bit. We got to work on working together and recognizing that everybody, whether you're a paid employee, volunteer, member of a board, an elected position, everybody's got to remember that person doesn't have to do that job. So they're offering their time, whether it's for paid services or not, to do what they can for this town, and they're doing it with, in their mind, best intentions. And you got to continue to remind people, as a group, when someone starts knocking someone down, you got to say, well, they didn't do that because they didn't care. They did it because they thought that's what was right. You can work together for re-educating and helping people rather than beating them down and abandoning them in place.
Thank you very much. Mr. Latham.
Well, that really is a question. It's a life question. It's how you approach life, how you handle statements that are made about you, and I guess I would recommend that people, every morning when they get up, read Rudyard Kipling's poem, If. And part of that poem says, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a fool of you. And it goes on. It's a fantastic poem. I think slander comes from ignorance and jealousy. And as the people of Barrie become more of a community over the next 2 years, hopefully with all the excitement that's going to be generated, that will become a thing of the past.
Thank you, Mr. Latham.
I think one of the biggest ways to get rid of slander, provide the facts. Slander is reduced by facts. People have the right information. Anything else they're told won't matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go back to you, I thought I saw another hand over in this area. No? Then ma'am, you may come back. Your question is, were they aware that that the town has a social media policy?
Does that mean we're open to showing our social media?
Are you saying that there is a specific policy in the bylaws of the town that talk about the social media?
May any violation may result
I'm guessing from their faces that they're looking that they had not heard of the policy previously, so
We
as you have
understand it.
read it.
I just didn't know who starts the answer.
Yeah, we were.
You went first, so I believe.
I think
Yes,
everyone-
yes, he was the last one to answer the last
Right.
question. So,
Yes.
so
So it's Jack, we're trying to make sure we keep this in order.
The question is, now that you are aware of the policy, how will you deal with this if there's an infraction, correct?
Well, it's not only a policy, just because it's written down, it's the way we should all conduct ourselves. I will conduct myself as the next selectman in an exemplary fashion. And I would hope that the things that you refer to will be a thing of the past. If they do occur, then I will have to find out how you address those things. But I certainly would never condone those types of hurtful comments on Facebook, Snapchat, or any other social media.
As far as public social media, I don't think anybody should be posting things that are inappropriate. My own social media, unless it's sharing something, a picture of my daughter or my dog, I don't post ever. You wouldn't see me posting something bad about somebody because I'm not fond of posting. It's a good policy. Yeah. If they within the guidelines, there should be guidelines to it too. Then within the guidelines, yes, I should think we should, because otherwise it hurts other people within the town, and that's what we're not looking for. Thank you.
I believe it kind of falls in the similar line of how would we address slander and things like that, but this is particular to social media. But to be honest, this would be the personnel board's issue. And people should know that if they feel they've been slandered negatively or some comments were made on, those employees would go to the personnel board and make the grievance. It should not be a select board's issue, because I just don't think. The problem is you start creating conflicts, because what one feels is a negative comment versus another versus just a truthful comment is a perception, a subjective opinion. And the select board is supposed to just run business. And that's why we need the personnel board. So they can do that, and if we're not dealing with personnel issues, we're not in conflict with just running business. But I do believe it should be addressed and upheld.
How many questions do we have here? Come on.
It would work under the same conflict of interest thing, where she would present, if she feels that's the case, to the board, and she would recuse herself of making a decision as part of the board. She would make the complaint and let the rest of the board decide if it was exactly what it is. And that's generally how you work when you have boards, because invariably you'll run into conflicts of interest where you gotta know when to step back. I'm sorry, I didn't
We
get it.
can't hear you. Because you were moving, she was bringing something to the south, and then she was making a decision on it anyway.
No, I believe he said that he was go to the personnel board, but they are looking to expand the
No,
personnel.
I understand your question. Currently, as it's written, you're right. What are the options? And she would have to present it to the select board to make a decision on that.
As it stands.
As we stand right now, and if that was the case, we would have to enforce it. We also need to look at precedent on previous enforcements to understand how we would enforce it. I wouldn't want to play an NFL type thing here.
Ma'am, we're gonna have to time out you. Correct.
All I'm saying is, we would have to follow the rules, and if that's your job now, that's what we do.
We're gonna call this one on this question. The gentleman in purple in the back has a question. And then we're gonna be looking to wrap things up here. It is now 20 minutes of 10.
Two weeks from today, one of you will be elected our next selectman. And then at some point further down the line, yet another selectman's position will be filled. I would like to urge you, it's not a question, urge you, for the two of you who are not elected next to you, 2 weeks from today, or you could please stand together for the third empty seat. Because the sense that I have here tonight is that any of the three of you may have some addition to the board's
Thank you.
Quickly.
Another question is asking about you. Campaign in the next 2 weeks. Keep these three things in mind. Out here, there are many, many people in there who would like to see trusted, open, accountable governments.
Thank you very much. On that note, gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for your time on this very warm evening. And you have expressed your heartfelt information. We can hear it in your voices that you would very, very much care for the town of Barry and how its government is going to be run. We all have learned a few things this evening, and I hope you will take some of the comments to heart and to understand even more about your town that you're looking to run. I want to thank everyone on behalf of the Barry Lions and the Barry Council on Aging for attending this evening. We would like to thank you for your participation in our questions and answer session. And please, remember to vote on Tuesday, August 9th. Every vote counts. Good evening and safe travels.